All right, so I will end this poll and share the results. And then we'll get started here. Welcome everyone to the Office as a Purpose-Driven Destination and How to Navigate Hybrid Workplace Models. This is our second in our 2022 Future Work series, focusing on hybrid, flexible workplaces. Last week, we covered promoting employee engagement in the modern workplace. And if you missed that, the recording is available on our YouTube channel, or if you email us, we will send you a link. In this discussion, our panelists will focus on the purpose of an office and how to create a hybrid workplace that people want to go into. So I thank you all for coming. If you have questions throughout the presentation, please put them into the Q&A or the chat, and Brenda and myself will address them to the panel at the end of the presentation. So today, our presentation will be given by Nick Iovacchini. He is a serial founder with a proven track record of building successful ventures across a wide range of industries. Nick is the CEO and co-founder of Kettle, a company enabling smart hybrid work solutions with software, workplaces, and expertise. Before we jump into Nick's presentation, I'd love the panel to do a quick intro for each of themselves. So Noah, let's start with you, and then pass it to Christine, Tony, Brian, and then Nick will take it away.
Thanks, Joseph. Thanks everyone who registered and is attending, and thank the panel. Noah Pusey, I'm the CEO of Ripple Analytics. We gather data and we crunch data and we give data to managers and owners and leadership so that they can make better decisions, more objective, data-driven decisions, and help their people develop and succeed.
Christine.
With Puzzle Human Resources. I am one of the founding members of the team here at Puzzle. We are a managed HR services organization. So we plug into businesses' HR infrastructure and either become their HR department or help their HR directors with specific projects and administration. We are the human behind all of the technology that we're talking about. And as Noah said, he helps provide data and information so that businesses can make those decisions. And, we partner with our clients to interpret that data and help move the business forward when it comes to human resources and their biggest asset and their biggest liability, their employees. Again, Christine with Puzzle. Thanks. Looking forward to it.
Hey everybody, I'm Tony Carnesi, the first half of the Doobie Associates. We're a consulting coaching combination. I focus on the doing. As a recovering CPA, nothing makes me happier than seeing our clients' numbers improve. I focus on the processes, the procedures, the structure, the report cards to help you build a strategy and stick to the plan to get the most from your business. Thank you for joining us today.
And I'm Brian Gorman. I am the being side of the Doobies. Even when we know what we should be doing in the office, we are all often being less than diligent about getting it done. So I am the executive coach working with managers and business leaders in becoming the best version of themselves to lead their companies forward to success.
Nick, the floor is yours.
Thanks, everybody. Excited to be here. I'm Nick, CEO and co-founder of Kettle. And today we're going to be talking about all things hybrid and kind of sharing insights of things that we've learned over the last 2 years. So I'm going to get my screen share going. Hopefully this can be pretty interactive. If you guys have questions, throw them into the chat and we'll make sure to pick them up. Joseph, is my screen coming through okay?
You're good.
All right, cool. So, really what we've been doing over the last 2 years is talking to a lot of leaders who are likely in the same shoes that you are, of kind of figuring out how to put the puzzle pieces back together. And for a lot of folks, it's challenging. I mean, we've been at home, we've been at work, we've been back at home, and sort of we use this fulcrum analogy of just, where are we going to land? And a lot of organizations are really struggling, kind of trying to figure out hybrid work, and it's costing time, money, talent, stress, and anxiety. I mean, we're all kind of in this new territory where there's not a playbook, and really, we don't think for most companies we're going back. So how do we move forward? a lot of this at the end of the day is going to come down to talent. We have some interesting stats. Half the people said they would quit if they were forced back to the office 5 days a week. We've got Gen Z and the millennials as a big part of the workforce and will be a larger portion over the next decade. They very much value flexibility and hybrid, both time together in office with coworkers and remote work. 70% say they would choose an employer that offers hybrid work over one that doesn't. And then we have just almost 90% of people want some time back in the office. And so you take kind of that confusing set of data points together with this great resignation, which we're all familiar with, where you have 4 million-ish Americans are leaving their jobs every month. And a lot of those are these kind of middle managers and directors and folks that are expected to do already kind of stretched thin and now figure out how to go hybrid and implement that for their teams. It's just a lot of change and a lot of sort of new considerations for the people function that have to be contemplated. And I think the power dynamics of the age-old employer tells employee when and where to be, or employee gets another job, it's kind of off the table. We all have changed. We've all had silver linings, and we're not eager to give back that time unless it kind of counts for something. It's sort of our point of view, and where we've discovered hybrid going through our research.
Hey, Nick, I'm just going to throw up a poll before you, as you talk here about when people go into the office.
Sounds good. Yeah, we saw in the first poll, 70% are going to be going hybrid. And, according to McKinsey, we've got 90% going hybrid as a result of COVID. So pretty good kind of correlation to what the research is saying. And the stakes are high. These types of decisions and restructuring work systems impact talent, engagement, and retention. They impact, for those of you that were part of last week's conversation, Noah went deep into engagement and the importance of that. There's productivity concerns, there's culture concerns, there's DEIB concerns. There's a lot of stuff that's sort of smashing into itself in this problem set. And there's big financial implications. Noah brought up some really interesting stats last week, a $500 billion annual loss from just having disengaged employees, which is massive. And then the cost of attrition is incredibly expensive. It's between 50 and 200% of a leaving individual's annual salary to replace that person, not to mention opportunity costs and everything else. So, the stakes are high, the talent is shifted and changed, and how do we kind of reconcile all of this is sort of the task at hand, and sort of loaded into this question of how do we go hybrid? How do we stand up a new model for working? So we thought it might be helpful to just kind of back up a sec and talk about what is hybrid. I mean, personally, I'm kind of tired of the word. It's everywhere at this point. I mean, hybrid this, hybrid that, and it does have a lot of different meanings. It can mean, some people zooming in, some people in person. It can obviously mean a host of different other things, but for us, the term hybrid is simply the category to describe a new working model where there's an intentional mix of in-office work from home and remote work, and kind of how all those things coexist will be sort of that's the special sauce of how we figured this out going forward. But in terms of for this presentation today, that's how we're defining hybrid. And we kind of created this Maslow's pyramid of needs hierarchy that we've sort of had fun playing with, where we look at the problem sets of hybrid in kind of this foundational fashion, where health compliance, and we're dealing with it now with Omicron, is sort of at the base. Like, really, there can't be in-office co-located experiences if we're all at risk of getting, really sick. So that's a box that has to just get checked at the beginning. Then there's sort of this concept of self-organizing and having visibility and communication and the logistics of hybrid and how we operationalize those things. What's the employee's responsibility? What's the team leader, manager's responsibility? What's the C-suite's responsibility? And how does that all get stitched together? And there's a lot of complexity there. And then, as we go higher up, we can start to think about things like improved engagement and culture and mentorship and onboarding and orientation, and some of those magical moments and really important moments in an employee experience that happen, and figuring out kind of what's a co-located activity, what's not co-located. Co-located just means working together side by side, and what activities are best suited for that environment versus can be done remote. And then we've kind of got, how does this impact the office? Because most organizations are sitting on some lease obligation at this point, and what are we going to do with that space? Do we have enough space? Do we have more space? Do we need? Why do people want to come into our space? And this is that piece about creating a destination, creating a why behind our workplaces. And we believe that that's going to become more and more important for engagement purposes, for employee experience purposes, collaboration, and just really, many of us have worked fully remote over the last couple of years, and there's got to be a compelling reason to be offered to folks to really encourage them to want to come back into the office or workspace together. And then kind of at the self-enlightened actualization tip of the pyramid here is just this balanced work lifestyle. And I think that's aspirationally where hybrid is going, is giving people time back, taking that time and applying it towards some non-work things, but also kind of working on our own terms and still getting the job done. And I think this is sort of a kind of a fun way that we look at sort of the problem sets and how they stack up, and also sort of the progression as this movement starts to mature. We'll start to be able to kind of crystallize some of these higher function concepts. But at the end of the day, we think kind of return to office and V1 hybrid is the starting line for all this. So kind of looking at the problem sets, there's a reason that organizations are struggling with this. Is there some real complexity once you go, okay, we're going hybrid? Well, there's a lot of questions that start bubbling up. How do you communicate where, when, and why people should work together? And what's the reasoning behind that? There's some really talented consultants on this panel and in the world who are helping really try to figure that out, because saying Monday, Wednesday, Friday in the office is one thing, but having a purpose and reason and tailoring that to a job function is something entirely different. There's also this question about visibility, which keeps coming up, and it's really, now that we're in a gray zone. We all showed up at the office pre-COVID because that's what you did. We all stayed home because that's what we were told. And even though it was like really disorienting, it was also really clear: stay home, don't come in. But now there's choices, there's rules, there's different teams, there's different approaches. So just having visibility into where people are working, and then coordinating those in-person work activities, like by team, by function. This is definitely not one size fits all. Some teams and groups need more time together, others need less. And then ultimately, how are these decisions that we're making going to play out over time? How does our hybrid model and approach impact things like culture, engagement, performance, employee experience, retention, acquisition? I mean, all these things are intertwined. And at the end of the day, there will be some causation that comes out of these decisions. And then this is also new territory. So how do we begin to measure so we can manage to measurement with respect to these decisions, and what's success look like? What are the financial implications? We talked a little bit about the financial implications of talent retention, but there's also office space over time, and that necessarily doesn't fit with the people function, but it's org wide. Those are two, people and space are two of the largest items on the P&L. So this is going to have kind of big impact, big complexity, but it's doable. I saw this article in Forbes yesterday, and with this quote from Darren Murph, and he said the only shot that hybrid has of working is if people invest in dedicated leadership to do it. And I agree. I think this panel is a really good representation of kind of the three legs of the stool that we believe are critical to kind of building these new work models. One is really leadership commitment, and whether that's working with the Doobies or Christines of the world and other consultants, and working with the internal people inside an organization to really commit to this and invest time to figure it out, because it's not a figure it out overnight kind of thing. 2 is investment in a tech solution. And I'll walk you through some things that we do, but whether it's our product or another product, having a technical solution to tie all this together for larger companies is really critical. And then 3, per NOAA and per some of what we do, gathering data, and Ripple does this very well. And you know, we're committed to doing this as well, but really getting the data early, because this is going to be, if this is the way of the future begins today. And he or she who has the data over time will really be able to make smarter decisions. This is going to look very different a year, 2 years, 3 years from now. And if we have the right data, we will be able to kind of get to that conclusion faster. Ryan, our CTO, likes to joke and say, the only thing we're certain about is uncertainty, and nobody's getting this right out of the gate. So, I mean, just really leaning into that and then gathering data to get smarter. But those are the 3 kind of core pillars that we think are critical to kind of taking the best swing at this new problem set. So, you know, the other folks on the panel have and will be speaking about kind of their lanes of this new world, but our lane is really about the tech solution and putting a platform in that we think kind of has the multi dimensions. Again, whether it's our platform or other platforms, we think that the key is having some centralized technology solution there and putting people first. A lot of what we've seen so far is really focused on space and assets, but when we all think about what we miss about the office and being together, it's not sitting at a particular desk. Maybe for some it is, but it's really about who you're working with and the way that you feel and the outcomes that you achieve when working with the people you want to work with, whether that's socialization or connection or collaboration. To us, that's what's at the center of this. And then taking this big knot and simplifying it is an important part of this. There's a lot of, we've all kind of been part of we're going back on this date and then we're going to do it this way. And we've taken a bunch of surveys and, you know, nobody's fault. We're in the middle of a global pandemic, but there's been a lot of stop start and a lot of just confusion. So simplifying that and giving leaders and employees kind of foundational footing on how to know where we're going from here. And then again, gathering and leveraging the right data. This is going to be iterative. It's going to be test and learn, and grabbing that data is critically important from your tech solution. Just some features to think about as you're thinking about what you might need. I'm sure we've all heard the terms hot desking and hoteling. That's a part of the equation, but by no means the entire equation from our point of view. Really, the ability to think about where, when, and why people are together and enabling that in a smart way, and allowing not only the leaders to do that, but also the end users to do that, we think is really important. Because if you think about hybrid, it's just dumping a bunch of work into the middle manager team leader level, and those folks have other day jobs, what they were hired to do, which isn't like make the office a destination. But if we put the right tools in people's hands, then there's a good chance that people can kind of do that on their own, and it's pretty easy to kind of build those experiences up for people that give them a why to come back into the office. Also having the ability to really just see where people are. That's one of the key things that we think, especially in, you know, feels like we're going towards more of a rolling return than this hard, fast, ceremonious, everybody back in the office on this date with this policy. I mean, maybe a year ago, we thought it was going to look a little more like that, but if it's a little more casual, more choice-based, we think giving people visibility is a really key feature right now. And also acknowledging that the office may be moving. You know, we know work from home, but third spaces or spaces near office will start to take on new meaning too. That could be, you know, your crew in Brooklyn has a coffee shop or a hotel where they like to gather. Or we could see more hub and spoke satellite office structures, but kind of acknowledging that there is going to be some decentralization coming, and it's not all the action isn't necessarily happening at HQ. In terms of health compliance, that is a mess all of it itself, but kind of having the HIPAA boxes checked and being able to really manage that on a go forward basis and acknowledge that whether it's boosters or whether it's tests, the definition of compliance will be changing over time. And then integrations we think are really important. So we've all got enough tools in our lives, the ability to kind of play nice with the existing collaboration tools that are in place. So we're not adding another thing that has to be managed. I think we all have enough of that. And then last is, again, just hammering on grabbing data to support iteration and optimization. So in thinking about kind of the system that you would deploy, these are some outcomes that we think leaders and team leaders, C-suite folks want to kind of look for, want to kind of set as North Star goals. One is just inspiring confidence. Everybody's confidence is shaken, and it's been that fits and starts dynamic that we've been talking about. So just kind of getting back to what your core business is and really transparently kind of inspiring confidence. Two is acknowledging that people's perspective around work-life balance, work lifestyle, whatever you want to call it, have changed, and being able to meet in the middle there and do that in a way that allows people to grab some of that time back. Because what we've seen is, I don't know, three quarters of companies have maintained or exceeded productivity in the last 2 years, but you're also seeing a lot of people are tired, and there's mental fatigue and all kinds of other things. So being able to provide some of that back and do that with transparency, obviously optimizing for engagement and productivity, culture initiatives, the good stuff that happens when we're together. I think a good hybrid program will really acknowledge that people don't want to commute, come in and put their head down to do computer work that can be remote. And so, having kind of the lanes of what should be done together versus what can be done on your own time, on your own terms, I think is a big part of it. And then, threading that needle between structure and flexibility. It's, if it's completely flexible, it could be overly chaotic. If it's too structured, as we've seen with companies like Apple, who have, taken more of a dictative approach, people aren't feeling that right now. So just kind of walking that line and of balancing those two. Obviously, we can measure retention right now. Maybe over time we'll get the eNPS and some of the engagement metrics through Ripple, but really having the ability to measure and have a scale so you can gauge success and evolution over time, and then ultimately being able to quantify the ROI that you get on retention, acquisition, real estate savings, and with respect to the office, being able to create compelling experiences. So those are some of the kind of things that we think about are the outcomes on the other side of the rainbow here.
Nick, I'm just going to launch a quick poll.
Yeah,
Keep going.
Yeah, we kind of have this final thought, two sort of final thought themes. One is this concept of self-organizing, and humans have this as an innate trait. And I think one of the challenges with hybrid is a lot of folks are paralyzed between I don't want to control, I don't want to be overbearing with dictation and policy, but at the same time, like, we got to do something. And we've seen a good deal of success, and we're not consultants, we're technology, we're technologists, but we have seen a good deal of success with people kind of pushing the decisions to the team level and to the individual level. And that's what Andy Jassy at Amazon has announced, and he was praised for kind of saying, we're going to let the teams figure this out, because the teams know what they need and what they're composed of and kind of what their rhythms and cadence are. So we think that that's a sort of a good thing to keep in mind, and not be overly prescriptive, just enable folks to kind of do this, get it going, observe it, iterate. And I think that's a healthy mindset of how to approach this versus thinking that we'll have it as a perfect, everything in a package kind of approach. And then last few, just sort of a couple of takeaways. Again, we're not consultants, but we've talked to a ton of folks. Again, think about giving people the ability to coordinate at the team level. They're closest to the work. Transparency is key. It'll help planning. It'll help inspire confidence. It'll help manage through difficult situations where people want different things. We know we're not going to please everybody, but being transparent about the approach and the commitment to figuring out together seems to be a good, I don't know, a good recipe for bridging the gap between what the employees care about, need about, the end users, and the leaders. And some people are both. Most people are both. Everyone's both, actually. Provide the opportunities for people to connect when and where teams see fit. Human connection seems to be at the center of this. Encourage social stuff as well as work. I was on the phone with 20 HR people last month, and one woman said something to the effect of, I can't figure out why I can get everybody to come to the happy hours, but not into the office. And I think it speaks to one element of this is we do want to be together. The bars and the restaurants, at least in New York City, are full, but the offices are empty. So bringing social engagement, making that part of a destination, I think is important. Thinking about when, where, and why people are together, so that if people's time, if they're valuing it differently, that the ask of people has some real purpose behind it, and it counts. And I think we'll find that people are willing to give that some of that time back, but it's got to really be thoughtfully orchestrated. Introducing guidelines and just thinking about the really important points of an employee experience. We all know that first 90 days is critical. For example, we know in certain business models having mentorship is critical. So being able to think about those things and enable those, and those will fuel engagement and also just build good culture. And then just acknowledge this is not one size fits all. Organization by organization, team by team, individual by individual. And so keep a pulse on what's the right mix, and gather that feedback from the employees, gather that data, and ultimately over time, leverage it to make smarter decisions. So that's it for me.
Thank you, Nick. Appreciate it. Lots of good stuff in there for everyone. I want to bring the panel into the conversation for a few minutes here. And I got some questions. I had a couple of questions from the registration data as well. So let's start with go around the horn. Start with Brian, since you're in my eye right now. And everyone can just answer the same question, if you have a different point of view or some additional insights you want to share. What is the purpose of the office, in your opinion? Is it more about, supervising? Is it more about the office providing a different function? Share some thoughts about how you see the office in the future.
Pre-COVID, too many supervisors thought the office was about supervising. It was about babysitting, making sure somebody's at their desk, walking past and making sure they're not playing solitaire, all of those kinds of things. That's not the purpose of the office. The purpose of the office is to foster that co-creation that great team members can bring to moving your business forward.
Christine, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I agree completely with Brian. I think it's an opportunity for employees and employers to connect, right? There is something about that human connection as we talk about technology. I think when we're in the office, the meeting should be purposeful. It's interesting because we were talking a little bit, Nick talked a little bit about onboarding in his conversation. I think part of the onboarding orientation might be a great place to have employees come in to the office, but what it is not is it is not childcare. Right. And mid-level managers should be able to manage employees and productivity remotely as well as in person. And it's actually interesting because on another take, I've had several clients that say that they love the fact that their office is no longer their water cooler. Right. And the reason why productivity increased during this hybrid remote environment is because people are nose to their grindstones instead of gossiping in the cafeteria over a coffee. So I think the office space definitely has a purpose, and I think it should be used for a purpose, but it's not the daycare any longer, for sure.
I want to come back to Noah and Tony in a second, but I want to just ask you a follow-up question there, Christine. because there's been lots of folks who miss that serendipity of the office cooler talk. And that's where some great ideas or, new business models pop up. So, is that good or bad?
I think, so for example, Puzzle HR was a startup pre-COVID, right? And we were all remote. We do have a corporate headquarters down in Tampa, but we are 100% a success story, how you can collaborate and have great ideas without necessarily being around a water cooler. I do think it's important, right? We have executive meetings that are down, we have sales meetings that are together. So I do think it is important for collaboration and just that, again, that relationship, that human building. But, if you learn how to interact via Zoom or whatever other channel you use, Slack, Teams. I mean, we've come up with all our products and all of our service ideas through Zoom virtually, right? We have a few times a year to, to get together and brainstorm on some ideas and build that human connection again, but we're not being creative or developing daily. And so I think it can be done remote. But I do think that that it is a nice time to have a place to go and congregate with your fellow peers and be able to build that connection. But it's not the end all be all if you don't have it.
Tony, what do you think? I saw you shaking your head a few times there.
The creativity, the human interaction, and I guess, some folks, and I think it really depends on the individuals, looking at the poll, 70% of people want to be in a hybrid workplace and 70% of our attendees have a hybrid workplace. There is a place for the office for that spontaneous, and for some folks who really want to have it. And I think allowing people that choice and asking your employees what they want to have and giving them that opportunity to have a choice empowers them. Some, especially in the financial industry, you can see that the heads of the financial industry, oh, you must come back to the office because this is where the creativity is. Okay, doesn't work for everybody. A lot of those folks don't want to drive 2 hours every day to come to the office, and you've got to listen to them. And that's my point. Find out what everybody wants and mix it up.
That's a good segue to Noah, because he's all about getting feedback. So what do you say there, Noah?
I mean, the purpose of the office has a ton of different answers, right? My first comment is if your office involves any portion of childcare, your hiring process is probably severely broken. Because if you're hiring people, you need to make sure at their desk are doing their work, whether they're remote or not, you're hiring the wrong people. The answer I was going to give was provide some structure, the office. And also just that word everyone throws around, collaboration. I mean, different organizations call their people different things, talent, assets, employees. Really, we're all human beings. And that means we like interaction on different degrees. But yeah, I mean, I think the office, and then, I mean, me well enough now, it's generationally, the generational workforce approach to definitions by Gen Z, millennials, Gen Xers, and boomers of what the office is will be different.
It's a great point about the generational differences. There are some people that feel lost without their office. And we've seen that at Kettle. Nick, anything you want to add?
Oh, I think you covered it.
Excellent. So we had Corinne asked, how do you encourage people to come back to the office? So Christine, I feel like this is right up your alley.
Yeah, I think it's, I think going back to what we keep hearing, right, is it's listening to your employees and pulsing them and doing those surveys to see how often they want to come in. What do they want to come in for, right? We're seeing some really unique and interesting things for employers that do want employees to come back to the office. One, they are targeted meetings, right? There's specific reasons why we're bringing people back to the office. And to your point, it's not to do things that they can do while they're in their remote or hybrid work environment. It's right. It's not to respond to emails. It's not to sit alone in a cubicle, but it is for team building. It is for collaboration. It is for those sessions where you are, being creative. We see clients right now offering everything from lunches being brought in, right, to workouts and chair massages being brought in, to coaches and leadership teams being brought in for professional development. So there's lots of ways we could be creative around how to bring and encourage employees back. But I think it really does come down to hearing and listening to your employees and truly engaging them and pulsing them on what happens. Make sure it is not something that they could be doing behind their computer desk at home, and maybe have a little fun with it. I mean, there's some really cool things that are happening right now in the work environment to create that team building. So yeah, right up my alley. And it's a fun conversation, especially when we have those clients that want to be creative and want to offer some unique value propositions to their employees to entice them to come back and get them excited.
I'm personally all about the snacks, but lunch will do it too. Anyone else have any suggestions, ideas for Curran?
Ask your people.
I have one, just really easy one to start with is figure out a way for people to see who else is going to be in the office. One of the things we've coined this term called anticipantment, which is people get geared up to come back to the office and they're all fired up. They get back in there and there's 3 people and not even the people that they know or we're looking forward to seeing. So just one easy way to start, in addition to what Christine said, is just give transparency into who's coming and who's going to be where. And I think you'll find that people will seek one another out sort of as a natural way to get going with it.
I also think it's, go ahead,
Go
Brian.
for it.
Joseph, I want to pick up on Christine's point of creativity, and was talking to somebody actually in the biotech industry. And in his situation, it was the researchers that had to be coming into the labs every day throughout the pandemic. And what the company did was once a week, they would bring in a fuel truck and fuel up everybody's car as a way of saying, thank you for coming in.
So that's what I was going to say is really, it might be unique to different teams, different people. I mean, when I was commuting to the city every day, it was 3.5 hours round trip. That's a different experience, whatever the office is. To encourage me to come and do that commute 5 days a week is completely different if you live 3 blocks from your office. So really, maybe the most important thing is not to have a cookie cutter approach. I mean, really appreciate the different people's employment experiences are different, and kind of pivot on that general notion.
So I'll add one more thing. I think one of the things that we're seeing is the mentorship opportunities. And this is Ms. Johnson had chatted in, right? So people who are needing extra help. So if you are a manager and you see an employee that is struggling with a certain aspect of the job, that's a great time to come in and have a meeting, right? And do it face to face and walk that person through whatever they're struggling with. But one of the things that Tony and Brian and I have talked about before, right, is that lattice approach to, especially in stagnant organizations that are very flat, and there might not be a ton of different promotions that you could get, but you might be able to move into a different department, even though it might be a lateral move. I think sometimes that's a great opportunity if you in person meeting other people that have different jobs than what you have and maybe not are on the same team, that in person meeting one-on-one, and to Nick's point, scheduling that when you're both in the office to share that experience. Again, just getting a different view of the holistic approach to the business versus you're just one department, you're one team. Great opportunity to get people into the office.
Great. Nick, during the presentation, you mentioned leadership must be involved. You also referenced the Forbes article earlier this week about new titles that companies are creating around the future of work. So this is a toss-up to anyone who wants to address it. Do you think companies should have someone dedicated to hybrid future of work issues? And are these new roles or really reassignments of responsibilities under a new umbrella? At the end of the day, does the title matter, or people just bringing people back?
If I may just try something, Nick said it earlier, managers already have a day job, and to add that hybrid juggling is something that has to be part of their job description. To bring somebody along to lead that, I think, is a great idea, because middle managers are going to be challenged. They're going to be stumped along this journey. And if they don't have somebody to turn to for the answers, if there's not somebody not internal, then of course, someone like Kettle Space could really provide those answers. But you do need, if not somebody internally, somebody externally to help the mid managers surf through this and be able to come through it on the other side safely and effectively.
Picking up on that and what everybody has been saying here, pre-COVID, there was a formula. Come in at 9 on Monday, work till 5, and repeat. We've all said this, there is no formula. We don't know the answers. And to have somebody in an organization whose focus is on monitoring what's happening in the rest of the world, learning and drawing the lessons from what is and isn't working within their own organization, I think is vital.
Anyone else on the title?
Yeah, I can jump in just to put a little more color on that. LinkedIn announced that in the month of December, they added 10,000 new positions that had the title of head of engagement manager, and with the sole purpose of like kind of doing what Brian just suggested, which is really owning this as a mission. It is, and I think it is a combination, like Tony said, of tapping into the experts and consultants and coaches that are really have been soaking this up and studying it for the last couple of years. There's some great ones. We're connected to a lot of them, but they have a lot of insights. And rather than be on a learning curve, kind of get an internal person who's passionate about this problem set and isn't, just having it necessarily dumped on their lap and adding work, but really whether that's an existing person and their plate is sort of cleared for them to be able to focus, and together with some expertise, I think it goes a long way towards putting that best foot forward, and then just continuing to monitor it, because this is literally just the starting line. When we go back and we do this V1, like it's going to change in a month, it's going to change in a year, it's going to continuously be evolving.
A couple more questions here. Let's talk a little bit about data, because I know it's a favorite topic for many of us. What information should we collect? Should companies collect? How should it be collected? And how do you see that impacting, workplaces, space, and as well as policies? I'm gonna throw it to Noah, since you're data man 1, Nick, data man 2, and anyone else.
Yeah, I mean, ask questions along the entire spectrum, from commuting experience to safety concerns to, personality interaction. Again, not to blow my own horn, but Ripple gathers data that confirms how your people are working together, and you can use the data as managers, leaders, executives to make decisions on team building. And just because you've known somebody on a team for 15 years doesn't mean that person is the best person to work with this other person. Have raw data, have objective information that you can say, these guys have worked together great in the past. They haven't worked all that great in the past. Why are we repeating something that's bad? And that's pre-COVID, COVID, and whatever tomorrow brings. Have a mechanism, and then of course use the data. It's one thing to gather the data. If you don't use it, don't bother gathering it, because your people will hate you for having to give the data and then not have it used.
Yeah, I can follow up on that. I agree with Noah 100%. Definitely don't gather the data and not use it. We've seen a lot of that, and I think part of the reason that confidence has been eroded. But it's understandable. Just when we all think we kind of know what's next, we don't know when we get smacked in the face. So no judgment, but it is what it is. But I would say, as I think about data and the future of these work models, there's this new dimension that hybrid introduces, which is really thoughtfully placing people together with purpose, and like who's where, when, and why. And that's getting that right and optimized is going to be a journey for everybody. And it's something we've never had to think about before, because we were always just stuck together, and that was just the way it is. And then we all stayed home and we figured out how to Zoom together. But if you think about that as like where this is going, there's a lot of data that will need to inform how that gets put together most effectively. What activities do people do together? What job functions need different ratios? All of that. And I think just a commitment to getting data early will serve people. Even if we all don't know exactly what questions we need that data to answer, at least when the time comes, we'll have it. And I think there'll be a substantial ROI for those that do have the data, a year out, 2 years out, et cetera.
So
Excellent.
recovering CPA with CFO glasses on, I just like to add that, one of the things I would add is, what are you measuring now? Okay. And how is your company performing? There's nothing worse than implementing changes and not paying attention to the productivity. And the bottom line is the bottom line. As your employees get what they want from their perspective, are you as a leader still getting what you want for your business, for your shareholders, for your people, for your investors? That's important. So don't forget that part, the basic stuff. What have you been measuring all along? And are you still paying attention to that?
Tony, if I can build on that, and maybe you weren't measuring the right things before.
It's a great time to check it out.
So, how do you measure that you're getting that productivity? It's not butts and seats. It's not hours on the computer. So really hone in on what your metrics should be and how you're going to collect that data and use it.
All about the output. So we're getting short on time here. Brian and Tony, I know you guys are big proponents of the 4-day work week. So I'm going to ask you one question and then I have a follow-up to it. Do you consider that a hybrid work model or a completely new work model? Because there's a lot of news about this. I'm sure everyone sees it in the news.
I'm not sure that the definition makes a difference, Joseph, but we certainly see it as a potential piece of the puzzle as employers are moving forward to both listen to their employees and address the needs of the business going forward.
Both are issues that employees can bring up and state what they want. And flexibility is really the key between both concepts.
All right. So I'm sure you guys have seen the news that Democrat congressman in California is trying to make the 4-day work week a law. What do you think about that? And obviously he's focused on California, but could go anywhere after that.
My gut reaction to that is companies aren't ready for it. In order to be able to go down to a 32-hour work week and pay overtime over 32 hours, what are those inefficiencies that exist that you need to get rid of? To just go directly to it, again, as Nick said earlier, moving over to a hybrid workplace takes time, it takes effort, it takes a strategy. If you're going to ask companies to move to a 4-day work week and start paying overtime, you're going to kill them, plain English. They're not ready. And working with, and again, the self-plug, working with somebody like us, other consultants who can help you with the inefficiencies in your business is a great place to start. So it's an opportunity, but it's not ready to work.
Again, if I can just build on that for a moment, we've had a lot of interaction with the global 4-day week movement and with people who like Banks Benitez and Uncharted and Megan Anderson at Wonderlust and others. And they all begin with a pilot. And they all end up with their own unique models that work for their business. And some of them are 50-hour-a-week companies that are coming down to 40 hours a week. So trying to force everything into the same model is not going to benefit anyone.
So personally, I think the model's broken because it should be the 4-day weekend. But we could take that up on a different conversation. Okay, give you guys final thoughts. We'll end with Nick. Tony, why don't you start?
I just think that Nick touched on so many good points today. And I love the Maslow pyramid. And I think it's a step-by-step process. And everybody, it's not overnight. You really need to put a plan together, try and fail until you succeed. Don't give up too easy. Stay at it until you find what works for you and your staff.
Brian, how about you?
And ask your staff questions and then listen to what they have to say.
Christine?
Agree. I mean, I think the feedback is critical. I love what Nick had mentioned about empowering mid-level managers to kind of start making these decisions on their own, right? And your mid-level managers know their teams the best. They're also the ones that interact the most. And again, when we look at your liabilities and your assets are really both of those, right? Your biggest asset and biggest liability. So, I really like that point where, different departments, different teams might have different needs. Let the middle level managers figure it out for their team. Also love what Tony said, how are you doing today? And what does your success look like today? When we were having conversations about productivity with clients in the mid-pandemic, the conversation really was like, well, how were we measuring productivity and what did that look like before? And there were a lot of blank stares on screens as we were talking about this. So I think this is a really great opportunity for business leaders to understand what productivity and what good looks like in their business and learn how to measure that. And again, if you're going to collect data, which we all on this panel agree is imperative, especially as we talk about employee engagement, retention, and attraction, do something with the data. Don't let it just hang out there. So I think, between Nick's tool for scheduling and seeing who's in and out of the office and what that looks like to productivity and success, and Noah's engagement opportunity with employees, you have a lot of tools that you could use to gather that data and then take action on that data once you get it.
Noah.
I couldn't agree more. Christine, Brian, Tony, Nick, great presentation. Thank you. I'll end with the only stat that came up in the first two webinars was that ROI on engagement, driving engagement, and anywhere between 350 and 500 billion dollars is lost by domestic companies by disengaged employees. There's a reason you want to appoint someone as your hybrid person, as your new office emerges. There's money at the end of the tunnel. You're going to save money. You're going to be more productive. You're going to be more attractive to the millions of employees that want to come work for you. So thanks again to the panel this week. Great questions from the people that attended, and thank you for attending.
Nick.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is, we all have a lot of empathy for those of you that are trying to figure this out. This is not easy. There's no playbook. And you have a lot of access to folks like that are on the panel, resources. There's a lot of good research out there. You don't have to feel like you're on an island. And I would encourage people to just kind of not try to optimize for perfection, because whatever we think perfection is today, probably going to change very shortly thereafter. If there's one thing that we've all learned is that, this is still evolving and it's alive. So hopefully this is helpful. Thank you all for joining. Thanks, Joseph and Brenda, everybody.
So Brenda shared everyone's contact info in the chat. Thank you, panel, everyone, for your preparation and thoughtful answers. Thank everyone for attending and who registered. And we will send around the recording with the slides and contact information again. I want to let everyone know that next week, the same time, 2 o'clock on Wednesday, Tony and Brian will be presenting Winning in the Great Resignation, Working for Jerks versus Enlightened Management. Sure to be a fun event. They've already prepared me. There will be polls, so come with your answers. And then finally on February 2nd, Christine will bring us home with a discussion about what HR will look like for the modern company in 2022. Thank you all again. For attending, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
And thank you, Brenda, for keeping us all together.
Thanks, Brenda.
There you go, Brenda.